Alan. Hey, Andrew. Andrew, if you hear me, check.
There may have been, but I don't know. I wouldn't.
You in there now? Are you in there? Can we text you? My phone is
People know this is happening, so they can get here.
By the way, I did have, just so you guys both know, Jose fixed the clock, so it's actually right now.
Oh, good.
I made copies of the...
It's in the binder again.
I might have, Natalie's got to read the English of the other. I think it's nice to have a little bit of English. Yeah, because then they have to sing.
I didn't realize we had our found it.
Oh, I feel so much happier.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about swapping this in the chairs?
Randy's not wearing a top this tonight, are you?
I think so.
Yeah.
What about swapping this in the chairs? Do you have feelings? Hey, Randy.
Yeah, we can do that, Daniel. No? I think he wants to mimic that. Don't spill the drink.
Yeah, I made the exact same thing. It's a Steven
Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova. I am so glad that we are here together. Just looking around, it fills me up with goodness and love and hope. So I invite you to do the same thing. I invite you to look around. Look around this sanctuary and see the punums, which is a great Yiddish word. It means faces. See the punums, the faces of one another, people you know really, really, really well, those you kind of sort of recognize, and those you've never laid eyes on before. I love that we call these gatherings services in English, because that's what it's all about. We are now part of something larger than ourselves. And we recognize that we are here to serve and to be present for one another. We are taught that we each have a unique spark of the divine in our faces. If you look at people's faces, you can see it through their eyes and through their smiles. That's when they say we're created in the image of God. That's what they're talking about. That divine spark that's in every single human face that tells us we all have that potential to be our best and sweetest and holiest selves. So now that so many of us are here gathered together, we can see those sparks in our faces everywhere. It's kind of like our very own balloon glow. Yeah? So you're not missing a thing. So much light in here. So we'll begin, and I hope he's beating the traffic. We'll begin with words from Paul Wagman. Oh, there he is. Look. Paul, who began his term as the president of CRC's board of directors just a few weeks ago, right in this very sanctuary, with words of greeting and welcome for all of us.
Whoops. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see so many of you back for the first time in several years in our Sukkot Shalom for a High Holy Day service. And welcome to all of you who are watching us virtually. I know it's traditional for the board president to address the congregation during the High Holy Days. But I know it's also traditional for most members of the congregation to ask themselves, who is this guy? How long is he going to talk? And how did he become president anyway? I want to answer these questions this way. When I was growing up, most of the boys that I was friends with aspired to play someday for the St. Louis Cardinals. A few years later, when it became apparent that this was a ridiculous fantasy for all of us, many of us decided our careers would lie in medicine or the law or academia, or that one day we would become novelists and live in New York and have lots of girlfriends. But I marched to a different drummer. Sometime during my impressionable youth, I went to a High Holy Day service at the temple where I grew up. And right at the start of the service, a bespectacled old man who looked a lot like I now look, but who I think had a little curd of cottage cheese stuck to his lip, stood before the congregation and asked for money. And right there, I understood the romance of being a synagogue president. How glamorous, I thought. You have a captive audience of people who are filled with joy because they haven't seen each other in such a long time, and who are awaiting, who are primed for a deep spiritual experience. And you get to immediately strike a note that is completely discordant. and for good measure, potentially inflict a large number of guilt trips. And who could resist that? So when Rabbi Talvi called me one morning about a year ago and asked me to consider becoming CRC's president, I knew I had to say yes. By now I hope, and I can tell, that you realize that I'm kidding a lot. That is not why I said yes to Rabbi Talvi, and in any case, it's not how we operate at CRC. We are not like the congregations that many of us grew up in. We don't sell tickets to high holy day services. We don't even assess dues. We ask people to self-assess. We try to be as inclusive as possible in every way, including financially. It's one of the core values that we're very serious about it. But it's also true that our model only works if our congregants are as generous as their particular means allow. CRC is like democracy, which we're finding out a lot about these days. It doesn't work on its own. It only works if people at the grassroots level, its members, make it work by volunteering their time and energy and by being generous with their resources. And in all seriousness, I hope you will keep this in mind. Before I close, I want to tell you that I am indeed honored to be president of this congregation. I raised my two children, my son and my daughter, at CRC, and I believe it helped make them the outstanding young people that they are today. This congregation has given me and many of my closest friends the kind of spiritual home, probably the only kind of spiritual home, where we could feel comfortable. At the same time, it's had a tremendously positive impact on the Jewish community and on the broader St. Louis community. We've had that impact because we've had great rabbis, progressive core values, and an astonishingly talented and energetic membership. Next year will mark the 40th anniversary of CRC. As we look to our next 40 years, I know we can continue to make great contributions, and that we will, as long as we have your help. Thank you, and a happy, healthy new year to all of you. Shana Tova.
Thank you, Paul. That was great.
So all that is to say, welcome to our Sukkot Shalom, our shelter of peace. We begin, as we should, on page 1.
Synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for fellowship.
May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, and hopes to nurture.
May the door of the synagogue be narrow enough
To shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May this threshold be no stumbling block
To young or straying feet.
May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May this synagogue be
For all who enter the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
This year, the start of Rosh Hashanah, as we know, falls on Erev Shabbat. So the candles we will light tonight are for both the holiday and the Shabbos. And it is a true honor to ask Mel and Barbara Goldman and their daughter and son-in-law, Erica Zal and Jim Phelan, to assist us in bringing more light to this place that is already filled with light. You know, if you come here on any Shabbat morning, maybe except for 2 a year, Mel is right there at the front to greet, to give you a siddur, whether there's a bar or a bat mitzvah or not. It's really, it's an incredible thing to have somebody whose consistency and whose generosity just exudes from them. And that's Mel. And Erica will be celebrating in just a couple of months the wedding of Adam Zal, who grew up right here. And in Dallas, Texas. It'll be an honor to be there with you. So there's a lot to celebrate in this new year for the 4 of you and for your family, and thank you for being such an integral part. I feel like there's probably nobody here that doesn't know the 4 of you, right? Right? We all do. And so thank you for lighting these candles. I also want to remark before they light the candles that it is the first Rosh Hashanah that we will be lighting candles without our synagogue's founder, Roger Goldman, of blessed memory. There was a funeral here a number of weeks ago, filled with so many good words about such a good person. And CRC was a part of his life, but oh my gosh, so many aspects, so much good that Roger brought into the world. So we feel his light, and we send our love to Stephanie and to Josh and to Sam and their entire family. And now if you'll light the candles, and we'll sing our blessings, which you can find on page 2. Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu v'hadlik ner shel Shabbat v'yom tov.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshon b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat v'shel Yom Tov, v'tzivonu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat v'shel Yom Tov.
And for the new year, Sheheche Anu, for our lives and the blessings of life.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Amen. Our prayers on Rosh Hashanah begin with a powerful declaration. Hineni, I am here, we are asked to declare. I will be humbly but radically present for all of it, to celebrate the start of a new year, but also to deeply reflect on how, going forward, we can be more often our very best selves, with open arms, with open minds, and with an open heart. So let's try it. The word is hineni. It's a biblical word. It means I am here, fully here. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. Hineni. I believe it. I am so grateful to Rabbi Susan for creating and setting the tone of how our community experiences these high holy days. It is now in our congregational DNA, wherever we wandering Jews find ourselves. At Coca, who remembers, you know, In the Round at Westport, unbelievable. At the Chase or the JCC basketball court, that was a good one. Or right here at CRC, or wherever you're streaming from, near and far. So let's read Rabbi Susan's own words that she wrote just a few years ago when we revised the Machzor. It's on page 6. Together. Page 6. Hineni is also a radical response, like Adam and Abraham. We are called to respond to this day with complete mindfulness, complete peace. For these holy days, we are called to take our own sins and the sins of the world. For these holy days, we are called to respond, Hineni. All may not be guilty, but we are all responsible to heal the planet and end the violence, breaking the heart of the world. On this night, we begin by standing together, by confessing these sins, and vowing that we will do our part to make this year a better year than the last. Our Nigun. It feels like high holidays when we hear our Nigun.
Oh
Continuing on page 7, where it says, B'chodesh hashvi'i be'echad lechodesh yihye lachem Shabbat Shabbaton Sicharon Trua Mikrei Kodesh Kol Melachet Avodat Lo Ta'asu. In the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, there shall be a sacred assembly, a cessation from work, a day of commemoration proclaimed by the sound of the shofar. Please stand if you're able. Let's read at the bottom of page 8. It's 5784. It's to fill in the blank. May it be your will, eternal our God, God of all generations, that the year 5784 bring to us and the whole house of Israel life and peace, joy, exaltation, redemption, and comfort, and let us say, Amen.
We are a people who have always pointed towards a better destination for ourselves and for the world. And yet we sit in the in-betweenness of it all. We sit in the liminal. We read this whole story of the Torah, 5 books which are pointing towards the promised land, and just as we are about to get there, we start all over again. And so we take a pause as we say this Chatzi Kaddish, this Reader's Kaddish on page 9. We take a pause in the in-betweenness of it all, from a year that is past to a year that is about to come. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shamei rabba be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedecho be'Yisrael v'agala v'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimeru amen. Yeheshmei Rabba Mevorach Le'alam Olam Me'almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitale V'yitala Shemei Dekudesha B'richu Leila Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma. Amen.
Hail the hand that scattered space with stars, wrapped whirling world in bright blue blanket, air, made worlds within worlds, elements in earth, souls within skins, every one a teeming universe. Every tree a system of semantics, and push beyond probability to place consciousness on this cooling crust of burning rock. Oh, praise that hand, mind, heart, soul, power, or force that's so enclosed, separated, limited planets, trees, humans, yet breaks all bounds and borders to lavish on us light, love, life, this trembling glory. We continue with the Baruch Hu at the bottom of page 9.
continue page 13 with the Shema.
In our past, and it's been a few years, we did something that we referred to as the Shemantra. Does that ring a bell with some people? And we're going to do a Shemantra again tonight now that we're all back together in one room. My apologies to those of you who are in your living rooms. You can do this too. And what we will do is we will, each one of us, in our own key, in our own tempo, in any way that feels right for you, you will do a Shema for yourself. But together, if you can listen both to yourself and to everything that's going on around you, we create this sort of glorious cacophony that becomes the Shema. It becomes greater than each of us as individuals. And in some way, for me, it's better than singing it all unison, because it has an element of each one of us and our own individuality. So I invite you each to, in a way that feels right for you, to join me and everyone else in this room and everyone else virtually on this service in the Shema.
May be seated as we continue with V'ahavta on page 14, and would like to invite up Aaron.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך ביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובחומך וקשרתם לרעות על ידיך, והיו שותפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו עשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קודשים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
So, Aaron, awesome job. Have you been up here since your bar mitzvah? No. So we're so lucky to have amazing young people in our congregation. So throughout the High Holy Days, they will be joining us to help lead us in certain prayers. So thank you, Aaron. That was perfect. Okay. So we are continuing with the Micha Mocha on page 16. The Israelites walked into the Reed Sea 1 foot at a time. What were they thinking about as the water rose up their legs, chilling their hearts, advancing toward their open mouths? We continue to walk here now, 1 foot at a time, on our better days forward. Alone, I cannot reach the far shore without drowning. Somehow I don't go under. The person to my right holds me up. Something I cannot see holds them up. Blessed is the source of help, so often unexpected. I step forward, and the sea is vast.
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar bakodesh, nora tefilot osef elef, malechutecha ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה זה לי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם
Amen. Page 17. So this year, and especially in the spring, I spent a lot of time driving back and forth from St. Louis to Chicago to visit my mom, now a blessed memory, and a wonderful member of CRC heard that I was going to Chicago a lot. An old friend, someone I've known for a long time. And she asked me, she said, I'd like to go to Chicago with you. I have a family there. And could you give me a ride? And of course I said I would. And we had a wonderful time. We talked about many subjects. I did ask this person if I could tell this story, and she said I could. In about the middle of the drive, somewhere like in Bloomington Normal, she asked me about the 2 weeks I spent on the road following around Bruce Springsteen. And I did. I drove down south and I saw the first 4 concerts of Bruce Springsteen's return to touring. And I told her about it. She's a little bit older than me and hadn't really heard much about the phenomenon. And I told her what I did and how I drove and went to concerts and stood in the pit. And she looked at me. I was driving, and she said, "Randy, are you an obsessive?" Now, she didn't say, "Are you obsessed?" And she didn't say, "That sounds kind of obsessive." She called me, or she asked me if I was an obsessive. And I thought about it for a long time. In fact, I kind of obsessed over it. And I'm still thinking about it. And she gave me a great gift, because that is our work on these high holy days, to try to figure out who we are, where we're going right, and where we could be doing a little better. And I can think of no better place in the whole wide world than in this Sukkot Shalom, than in this shelter of peace, to do that sacred work. We call it Heshbon HaNefesh, an accounting of our souls. How to be our best selves in the new year. I'm looking around and there's some really, really amazing people. But like me and my obsessiveness, we all got something to work on, you know what I mean? And when we all do that, we do make the world a better place. I believe it with all my heart. Take this soul, living in my skin and bones. Take this soul and let it sing. child is born. Yahweh, Yahweh, it's always dark before the dawn. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Here we go. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be like you mean it. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gotta be alright. Everything's gonna 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 be alright. Ufros aleinu Sukkot, Sukkot shlomecha. Ufros aleinu Sukkot shlomecha. Cover over us tonight with a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace for you, for those you love. A shelter of peace, a Sukkot Shalom over all creation, over everyone and everything that dwells on earth. May this night, this Shabbat, this beginning of a new year, fill us all with peace, with shalom, with the ability to change for the better. A little less obsession, a little more wisdom. So, you know, at CRC, we don't always use all the traditional terms that some of you grew up with, that, you know, maybe conservative or traditional congregations. But we actually do have a shamus. You might know that word? Someone who really just makes things work. When it's services, make sure that everyone's taken care of and everyone feels welcome. We have Mel on Saturday morning, and we have Stan Platke on Friday night and Saturday morning. And Stan has a reading for this most amazing Shabbat, which is also Rosh Hashanah. So where are you, Stan? There he is. Where he always is.
Shabbat Shalom, and Lashana Tova. So this piece is entitled simply Shabbat. So we welcome Shabbat into our hearts and into our homes, joining with the Shekinah bride, joining us as we put aside the toils of the past week, the trials, the tribulations, and all the schmutz that we carry with us, but now we let go at this very moment in order to guard Shabbat so that she will guard us back. The Shabbat candles providing passion, our minds reel in the sanctity of the moment. This gift of time, this special place, Shabbat, that magical transport to Shalom.
We continue with Vishamru. If you'd like the page, it is all the way in the back, is where you'll find it. It is on page 215.
Tefillah, our time for prayer during the High Holy Days, is extra special. On Rosh Hashanah, we have an image of the gates opening. We are told that the gates of heaven are open, and that this is the time to reach deep into our souls, search for those ways we haven't been the best version of ourselves, and resolve to not fall into the same trap again before the gates close at the end of the High Holy Day season. The insertions into the Rosh Hashanah Tefillah are there to remind us of this and push us to do this work. Life is not easy, and there are always curveballs. But in order to have a life full of blessing, sustenance, and peace, we must first do the work of tshuva, of reckoning with who we want to be in this new year of 5784. Please rise as you are able on page 18 for Tefillah.
Ata Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei ve'Elohei Rachel Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Ve'Imahot U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem Lema'an Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch Ata Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah.
The opening lines of the Gevurot prayer bring us back once again to focus on the gift of life, Mechayeh HaKol. How incredible it is that we have lived to welcome another year. We know that being inscribed in the book of life is a gift, not a given. Today of all days, we welcome this reminder to focus on the miracle that we are here together. We are on page 20.
Tagibur le'elam Adonai, mechayeh hakol et harav lehoshia, mechakel chaim bechesed, mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, tzomech noflim verofeh cholim, umatir asurim, umkayem emunato, Lishanei afar, mi chamocha ba'al gevurot, umidom elach, melech memit umchayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lechayot hakol, baruch ata Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Page 21, you may be seated.
One of the names for Rosh Hashanah is Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance. And so there's a lot of remembering, and I know we all have our memories and those that we remember and the moments we remember. But this is time for all that is good and high and holy universe to remember us.
Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo letova.
This day, remember us for well-being.
Amen. Ufokdeinu livracha.
This day, bless us with your nearness.
Amen. Vehoshienu volechayim.
This day, help us to live.
Amen.
One of the hardest things to accept, I really believe it, is that all of those out there, all of those people, we look out and we see them doing wrong. We see them making mistakes. We see them hurting and causing pain. One of the hardest things to accept is that they also believe that what they are doing is right. On page 22, we have Retzeh, we have Avodah. This is the prayer, this is the hope, this is the plea. May what we do, because we believe it is for the good, may it actually be for the good. is something about this prayer, the Sefer Chaim, about these words, which captures the essence of it all. I think all of us in our hearts hope the future holds. But we hope this new year of 5784 will hold. This melody is the song that I have sung to my twins every night as a bedtime song for their whole lives. Sefer Chaim, in the book of life, please God. May we be written for a bracha, for a blessing, for shalom, for wholeness. May we have all that we need. Parnasa Tova, may it be written and sealed, that we are protected, us and all your people, for life, for goodness, and for peace. Find the words on 62 if you'd like. Sefer Chaim, Sefer Chaim, Baracha v'shalom u'fanasa tova, b'Sefer Chaim, Sefer Chaim.
We take a few moments for the prayers of our hearts before we move into Avinu Malkeinu.
Shalom Imromav Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru
There's a concept in mystical Judaism. It's called dveikut, and it means to cling to the divine. It describes those times in our lives when there is no distance, nothing separating us from God or godliness or spirit. Sometimes we call it being at one with the universe, times in nature, times in song and prayer, times when we are engaged in righteous action for a good cause, in relationship with another person, whether it's someone that we're intimate with or someone that is a stranger to us, but we just connect. Something is happening there, the mystics believed, that we are utterly attached, connected, clinging to God. And I know for us here, one of those times of the Dveikut for many is when we come to Avinu Malkeinu. And Paul Wagman talked about 40 years, and that's an important number. But 38 is also an important number because 38 years ago was the first time that Leslie sang Avinu Malkeinu at CRC, 38 years ago. So, and we soar, we fly, our hearts are open, we cling to all that is good and high and holy. And so, in this year of significance, in this year that we have hope in our heart, that these days will launch us into something better, a new paradigm, with the help of this prayer. Please stand if you're able. We're on page 27. Avinu, Malkeinu, hear our voice. Gentle Mother, are you listening?
Avinu
May be seated. Shana Tova. I have this memory from 20 years ago that I still haven't fully processed, that I still haven't shaken. I was at my college girlfriend's house with her parents, hanging out and eating good food as we did lots of weekends. I loved her parents. I felt particularly close to her dad, a German immigrant and a professor at the local college who I'd stay up late with well into the night, talking philosophy and life and politics. We were all sitting there when the phone rang, and he got the news that his father, my girlfriend's grandfather, had died. He was stoic. She was sad. This was a man, for her, who had been the source of sweet childhood memories of the German countryside, of sprawling dinners for the holidays. And this was also a man who, long before my girlfriend or her father were born, had marched with the SS during the Holocaust. I still remember when I heard that news, the very first thought that went through my mind. It was the first thought. Good. Another Nazi is dead. When you grow up as an American Jew in a post-Holocaust world, a relationship with Germany is unavoidable. From my grandparents, I learned to never buy a Volkswagen. From our culture, I learned to be a little bit weary whenever I heard a German accent. And from CRC, it was a still memorable post-confirmation class talking about the obligations that Germans do or don't have to Jews today. This question, what does it mean to be a Jew living in relationship with Germany and Germans in a post-Holocaust world? This question almost feels Talmudic, and that it weighs in the ways that it distills the ethics just down to its essence. What are the ways that our past, both our personal past and the past that we inherit from our ancestors, like it or not, what are the ways that our past obligates us today? This question, I really believe this is the purpose of Rosh Hashanah, of Yom Kippur, of these days of awe, to struggle with who we were so that we can become something better. This is the idea of tshuva. At its root, tshuva is classically translated as repentance, but at its root, it means to turn, to correct, to adjust. But I think to really understand this concept, we also have to understand the Hebrew word chet. Now, this is usually translated as sin, but the Jewish idea is very different from what our Christian neighbors might mean. Chet's originally an archery term for missing the mark. As in, we took a shot and we didn't hit the bullseye. We were too far left, or we overshot the target altogether. My tendency in archery. Chet isn't sin so much as it's the places where we haven't been who we should have been. And just like in life sometimes, when we take stock of where we missed the mark. We also have to reckon with those places where we have left holes in the fabric of our relationships, of our communities, and within ourselves. I've been reading a remarkable book, one that was even more controversial in Germany than it was in the United States, called Learning from the Germans: Race and the Memory of Evil by Susan Neiman. She's an American Jewish philosopher who spent her whole adult life living in Germany and heading up the Einstein Forum in Potsdam. How is it? It's really amazing when you think about it. How is it that Germany went from being the epicenter of genocide that just 80 years ago murdered 6 million of our people, 1 million children? How is it that Germany went from that to today being among the last great hopes for liberal democracy left in the world? How is it that Germany, despite its failings, has been the absolute moral exemplar among the nations of the world in its response to the Syrian refugee crisis? Susan Neiman suggests that it's because of one concept, and of course, being German, this is one word. I'm going to try to say this. Vergangenheitsaufarbeitung. It's really one word. Roughly translated, it means working off the debt of the past. But for Germany, it is shorthand for a cultural process of reorienting their society around what we owe the world because our ancestors were Nazis. For the first few decades after the Holocaust, after the war, Germans and German society were so enmeshed in their own suffering, in their own real traumas and narratives of victimization, that there was little to no reckoning at all with the crimes that they had committed. 1/10 of all Germans died in the war, overwhelmingly the men of that generation. Their cities and homes were burned out and reduced to rubble. And not only did they lose, but they and their society and their whole mythological worldview became shorthand for the most criminal, the most preternaturally evil manifestation of humanity that there has ever been. In many ways, this is where the rest of Central and Eastern Europe stopped. Reams and reams of scholarship have shown just how many Poles and Austrians and Hungarians were quite willing participants in the slaughter of our people. And yet in so many of those nations, because they weren't German, they've been able to keep telling themselves comforting myths about their ancestors, rather than reckoning with the disturbing reality of their past. In Germany, however, avoiding a reckoning with the past has been impossible. Even as the perpetrators of the Holocaust became known as the silent generation for the ways that they came home broken and quiet and refusing to talk about what they had done, their children, the next generation of Germans, particularly the educated and professional children of the Nazis, they turned around and by and large they looked at their parents with disgust. Disgust not just with what they had done, but also that Germany was so focused on its own suffering that it was ignoring the moral weight of the much greater suffering that it had caused. It was this generation that demanded Vergangenheitsaufarbeitung, demanded that German society begin working off the past. The first time I went to Germany, maybe appropriately, it was a layover on my way to Israel. I graduated from college and I was going off to spend 6 months being a bum on a kibbutz. I saw that I had a long layover for an afternoon in Berlin, so I called up my dear friend, Michael Okrab, a German international student who had lived 3 doors down from me in college and who Dan Elfenbein just hung out with not so long ago in Germany. I called up Michael and I asked him if he wanted to get lunch during my layover. Instead of coming for a few hours, Michael said, in that German accent that had long ago morphed from setting my hair on edge into the beloved voice of a friend. Instead of coming for a few hours, he said, why don't you come for a few weeks? And so I did. Outfitted with an old-fashioned paper map that marked all of the Jewish sites in Berlin in an unlimited U-Bahn pass, I explored every single one of those Jewish star symbols on my map. I showed up at a shul for Shavuos, where, much to my surprise, not only did no one speak English, but hardly anyone spoke German. The Sidurs, the prayer books, were in Russian. That's when I learned that Germany today has 250,000 Jews, most of whom have come over from the former Soviet Union. I spent an afternoon alternately crying and feeling numb while walking through the pastoral fields of Buchenwald, marveling at the busloads of school children who were brought to concentration camps on field trips. And then there was my trip to see the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. It's hard to convey the scale of this memorial. It's hard to convey the geography of it. It takes up an entire city block in the center of Berlin. It sits in the shadow of the Brandenburg Gate, and it's composed of waves, of stone pillars of different heights, each roughly the footprint of a casket. I think the closest you can get to understanding it is to imagine a Washington, D.C. very different from our own, whereas the author Susan Neiman suggests the Washington Monument looms not over a grassy field, but over an unavoidable, enormous memorial to the Middle Passage, with a museum that presents the millions of Africans who were murdered and enslaved as victims of the genocidal project of building America. Like I said, a very different Washington, D.C. than our own. But the most striking memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe is the most common one. Almost everywhere you go in Germany, you look down at those ancient cobblestone streets and you see what have become known as Stolperstein, stumbling stones. They're these brass markers that they place over the cobblestones right in front of the homes where Jews lived and loved and were deported and murdered. You can't walk the streets anywhere in Germany or sit down at a cafe without stumbling over these memorials to Germany's greatest shame. In her book, Susan Neiman talks about the decision to move there with her young children, and she doesn't even need to say the unspoken part out loud. I would not have taken them to a place where they or I would be forced to live in fear, she writes. Or put slightly differently, I would not have taken them to a place where they'd be forced to walk past Hans Wehrmacht statues or flags flying swastikas. I am struck by how very Jewish this German concept of working off the past feels. Because of course, at its core, this is tshuva. This is the work that we are called to do every year during these days of awe. It is the work of acknowledging the ways that we haven't been the best version of ourselves. We haven't been the people that we could have been, that we should have been. And no matter what has happened to us, no matter the very real pains, and there are so many pains that so many of us have endured, the lesson of tshuva and the Vergangenheitsaufarbeitung, that is the last time I'm going to try to say that, I promise. The lessons is that if we really want to become that better us, if that's our goal, then focusing on our own pain and on the ways that we have been wronged is always going to be a dead end on the road to self-improvement. So this is my hope. This is my blessing for us in this new year of 5784, and my challenge for myself. That during these Yamim Noraim, these days of awe, may we do the sacred and hard work of tshuva. May we see and acknowledge and own the pain that we have caused and not get mired in the trap of our own sufferings. May we work to become the sorts of people that we always could have been and that we may yet become. Shana Tova. May this be a year of sweetness, of joy, and of growth for us and for the whole world.
Thank you, Rabbi Daniel. Of the many remarkable things about that teaching, struck me that German and speaking German in a Reformed synagogue actually has roots, because the first Reformed Jews that came to the United States were German, the 19th century. And the first rabbinical students in this country that went to the same seminary that Rabbi Daniel, Rabbi Karen, Rabbi Susan, Rabbi Jim, and I went to, they had classes in German. They read Jewish books on philosophy in the German language. And there's something, as Rabbi Daniel said, just so whole and healing about how do we get to a place, how do we get to a real place of tikkun olam, of repair. It's hard and it's long, and yet we're in it. You know, that's who we are and what we want to be. This Aleinu prayer, this great Aleinu, in the traditional Aleinu, the full Aleinu, that phrase is right there. We think of it as a modern Jewish concept, tikkun olam. But litaken ha'olam, it's in the Aleinu, it's in the text. This desire to bring wholeness, to bring healing, to bring repair, especially where the scars are so mighty and so big and so deep. I ask if everyone can please rise if you're able. We're on pages 29 and 30 with the ark open, with our hearts open, the great Aleinu. may be seated. Mariah Thomas has been coming to services at CRC for a very long time. I remember when your boys, who are now, teenagers and older, would fall asleep right there on your lap as we went through Friday night services. And Mariah just recently joined the staff of CRC as the assistant to the rabbis. And I'm going to ask Mariah to come up and offer another reading.
Shana Tova. Nothing can prepare you for the death of a loved one, regardless of their health or health status. We always think we have one more time, one more phone call, one more visit, and then time runs out. My Aunt Marlene of blessed memory reminded me of this. Of blessed memory, I've said this many times, but it sounds funny to me now, referring to Aunt Marlene, because at 85 years old, I was not ready for her to leave us. Aunt Marlene was the baby of 4 Voda girls born to my great-grandma Lena, and she was truly an enigma. Most recently, I reconnected with Aunt Marlene right here at CRC as we saw each other at services, and she sat right in that chair where her talit is. She would always be so pleasantly surprised when Mom and I would walk in. Mom and Aunt Marlene, both hard of hearing and equipped with hearing aids. I called it the hearing aid battle because I didn't know which one was ringing. But they found their places in the front so they could see and hear all of the action. Along with my position at CRC, I began attending Saturday morning Shabbat services, and every Saturday, with the exception of illness or injury, Aunt Marlene was right there. In her spot, where their chair now adorns her talit and kippah, I often took the seat next to her, kept her on track in the prayer book, and straightened out her talit as needed. Aunt Marlene adored Stan and Lisa, who drove her to services every week. Stan emailed me not too long ago, and he said the trick question in Judaism is, what is the holiest day? And the answer being Shabbat is something he said Aunt Marlene knew in spades. This is a true statement because no matter what, she was here every Shabbat she could attend. Aunt Marlene also adored James, our police officer who keeps CRC safe every Shabbat. Stan would pull up, James would assist her out of the car, and James would wheel Aunt Marlene to her usual spot. After services, James and I would battle it out to see who got to wheel her back to Stan's car. I am sure James won most of those battles. Aunt Marlene also loved her CRC rabbis. One story Rabbi Randy spoke of about Aunt Marlene is during one visit to the ER, and she was waiting to be seen, and Randy was there with her. He said, out of nowhere, Aunt Marlene asked him to dance with her. Right there in the middle of St. Mary's ER. Rabbi Randy happily obliged, and he danced with Aunt Marlene. I'm sure people there probably thought they were crazy. But if it made that woman happy, I'm sure neither of them cared. Rabbi Karen visited with Aunt Marlene often at Kingsland Walk about once a month. As many of you know, Rabbi Karen rarely, if ever, wears a kippah. And she spoke about how Aunt Marlene pointed this out more than once. And asked Karen why she, a rabbi, never wore a kippah. And Rabbi Karen's simple response was, I could never look as good as you. And that was enough to make Aunt Marlene happy. Not too long after we celebrated Aunt Marlene's milestone birthday, she fell ill and was admitted to St. Mary's Hospital. I hated that she was in the hospital, but I loved my visits with her. I never thought that that last visit with my mom and Ty would be the last time I saw her. I fully expected to see James wheeling her into the sanctuary in the weeks after. I told myself I would stop by the rehab facility she was in to visit, but I didn't. I didn't follow up to find out whether she was released back home. What I did get was a phone call informing me that she was gone. If I could leave you all with one message today, it would be to take the time to go visit. Don't put it off until another day. We might not get another day. I regret to this day not making the time because I made excuses as to why I didn't go. I thought we had time, and boy, was I wrong. Aunt Marlene is so very loved by her family, friends, and CRC family. She lived a life full of love and did things her way. She is deeply missed so much.
So what we are here to do is respond in holy ways to lost Marlene Eisenstein and all the people we miss. And we say, may the memory of good people bless our days, page 31.
May the memory of good people bless our days. Bless our days. Bless our days.
Amen. What we'd like to do in this moment of Kaddish is to remind everyone that there is a Yizkor service at the end of Yom Kippur where we will read every single name and hear every name that people want us to say and read. For now, we definitely want to have a time of deep remembrance for our loved ones. And we want to recognize our mourners. So what I'd like to do is to ask anyone who is in their year of mourning for a loved one, walking that path, to please stand so we can see you and recognize you. And in a moment, we'll ask you to kind of whisper or say softly the names of the people that you're remembering, but please stand. I know so many of us suffered deep losses in this year. Also would like you to stand if this is the yahrzeit, the anniversary, the time of the year that you lost a loved one. Certainly a tender time, the holy days, the holidays, to have a loss. So we want to recognize you as well. And now I'd like to ask the whole congregation to stand together with our mourners. I do have some names. I'd like to read some yahrzeits that are on our list, including Sue Gallup and Wilma Riley and Edward Salsky, Joanne Glazer Steinbaum, who was Mike Steinbaum, a blessed memory's mom, and I remember him talking at her funeral about how he loved when she rubbed his back. I'll never forget that. For Rebecca Ferber and Cecilia Graber. And then our recent, and also it's the yahrzeit of John Mann, amazing, Bonnie's husband, and just a wonderful person in our community. Recently, just today, we learned of the loss of Faye Cohn, who was the mother of our member Sue Lynch. Remembering Edward List and Jody Rich, and Joan Butcher and Marlene Eisenstein, and Leah Feinberg, and Roger Goldman, and Saul Feinberg, and Morton Ornstein, who was Joy Lieberman's brother. Gary Morris, Sarah Kessler, Andy Poltman, Brian's brother, and Paula Kessler's brother as well. Susan Hockman and Tovia Siegel, Sarah's mother. Hilda Polsky and Linda Randall, my mom. Aaron Coleman, Matthew Blickenstaff, Beverly McWilliams, Sue Smith, Carl's wife, and Dr. Moisey Shopper. Lila Rosenblum, whose grandson Jack had his bar mitzvah here just 2 weeks ago. Marsha Wolfsey, Leah Larson, Paul Michel, Andrea's husband. Lois Loomstein, Steve is here. Steve, your mom of blessed memory. Kathy Lass and Ann Epstein. Maurice Goller, Margie Hartman's father, and Gloria Sirkin, Nancy Wiley's mom. Remembering Bert Newman, Stacy Newman's husband, and David Adelstein, Harriet's husband and Cheryl's father. Lois Chait, Nikki Nymark, one of CRC's poets, and she would always offer a reading at the high holidays. Stuart Milner and Bruce Schneider, a young husband and father. Patty Twellman and Verabon Croft. Daniel Williams and Paul Schumer, Suzanne's husband, and Paul's books. So many people that we think about. I know that you all have names in your heart and soul. If you want to right now, just take a time and maybe whisper or say the name to the person next to you, and we'll have a second of just filling this sanctuary with their names. We're going to say the Kaddish now together for all of them. I was thinking as Daniel spoke about the Skrenkas who have family from Chalasov, where our Torah, our survivor Torah scroll comes from. And we convened with them to show them the scroll. It was incredible. So for all these good people, for all who we remember and will never forget, we're on page 32, Kaddish Yatom. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chaye echon v'yom echon, v'chaye decho beit Yisrael, b'galau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehei shlam rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen. May all of their memories be for a deep and beautiful blessing. Please be seated. Just briefly, a few announcements for this Chag, this holy day. We continue tomorrow at 10 o'clock Rosh Hashanah morning services, complete with shofar, and our Baal Tekiah, Alan Freed, also 38 years, right? Yeah, yeah. If I knew how to add 38 and 38, Yashikoah. And then the day continues, not as long as Yom Kippur goes, but there's activities and programs after the morning service, including the children's service at 2:30. Rabbi Karen has planned another wonderful children's service for children of all ages, I guess. And then immediately following the children's service, we run around 3:30. Whoever would like to come and walk over to Murphy Lake over in Forest Park, the weather has just been magnificent. We might even catch a few balloons doing Tashlik this year. Pretty, right? Timing is almost perfect. We'll start walking about 3:30. You can also meet us at Murphy Lake around 4:15. If you'd like to go right there, there is some parking, I believe, right by there in the park. And we'll gather and we'll do our Tashlik ritual. We'll symbolically cast our sins and get ready for the days of awe and for Yom Kippur. And then we do have a day 2, long-standing tradition at CRC, and the Rabbi Jim and Rabbi Susan, and wonderful music again. Sunday at 10 a.m. will be the second day Rosh Hashanah service right here at CRC. Also on Sunday, 4:30, we did this last year when we were just emerging out of the pandemic, and it really went well. We're going to have a community shofar blowing. I was like, right? In a great spot, Art Hill, right? Yeah. Really, really excited to do that. On Sunday, 4:30, gather at Art Hill. I don't know if anyone remembers, but years ago, we had an observance, this crazy blessing of the sun that only happens every 28 years, according to the Talmud. I think Robert Fishbone, who's here, was there for sure. Alan was there, that's right, and we gathered at Art Hill to see the sunrise. So here we'll be able to hear some more shofar blasts on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Just a couple really quick other announcements. Because of Rosh Hashanah, our wonderful gardening crew, I see Karen Flotty back there in the backbench row. She's a backbencher of high degree. Monday instead of Sunday. So if you want to garden, all the food that's grown in our garden goes to the wonderful Trinity Episcopal Church, where it is given to people who are food insecure from 5 to 7, right, Karen? On Monday. If you've never gardened before, or if you're like a pro, we have work for you. And it's really holy work outside and for a good cause. And then want you to know that our CRC Refugee Resettlement Circle, who helped support a family who came here from Afghanistan and is now helping a Ukrainian couple, has received generous support from our CRC community, including, I understand, just recently, a donated car, which the couple so desperately needed from a CRC member who wishes to remain anonymous. But there's more to be done. You will hear more about this effort during the shofar service tomorrow. But for now, the circle members, including Joy, I see Joy right in front of me, ask that you check their blurb in each week's CRC email newsletter for ways you can help be part of welcoming and resettling this couple from the Ukraine. So those are some of the announcements for these holy days. Of course, Yom Kippur, there is a handout. If you want to look ahead at what our breakout sessions are going to be, we have great breakout sessions after Yom Kippur morning. You can grab a handout. They're also on our website. But, my goodness, we have come to this point. This is good medicine. That's what I call it. This way to conclude the service, this blessing, this benediction. I feel like we stand during this, so please stand if you're able. Yeah, really good idea. We're on pages 35. And 36.
And now, at the beginning of a new year, we pray. pray for a blessing.
The spirit of wisdom and understanding.
Amen.
The spirit of insight and knowledge.
Amen.
The spirit of knowledge and reverence.
Amen.
May we overcome trouble, pain, and sorrow.
Amen.
May our days and years increase.
Amen. Yehi ratzon lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu שתחדש עלינו שנה טובה ומתוקה.
Eternal our God and God of our people, renew us for a good year.
Amen. 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 May it be a good year. May it be a healthy year. May it be a year of peace. May it be a healthy year. May it be a year of prayer. May it be a year of peace. May we have the strength to make it so. Shana Tova lechol bnei Yisrael, lechol bnei bneiנו. Shana Tova lechol bnei Yisrael, ולכל בני בנינו.
Hang in there. Amen. Thank you for our music. Thanks to our musicians. Thanks to our staff and to Michael and friends in the streaming booth. Thanks to all of you. Our hearts really are filled, all of ours. We did that to each other and for each other. And there'll be many more thank yous in the days and weeks to come. But it's all about holiness, and that's why we offer Kiddush at the end of the service.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol am v'romamanu mikol lashon v'kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. Vatiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'yahava et yom hashabat hazeh v'yet yom hayom hazikaron hazeh yom teruah mikra kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim ki vanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol hamim ודברך אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת וישראל ויום הזיכרון. אמן. לחיים.
Shlema, forever. Those sirens are for. Thank you, Alan. We do have a nash, oneg, out there. Hope that you can stay and be with each other to start the new year. And we have the round challah that symbolizes the cycle of the year that's starting now. So let's make motzi for all that we have and all that we have to share with each other. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. And now, if you will, put your arms around each other. It is so good to be together. It's so good to be together. We love you all. And we don't want to leave this place without blessings, without words of love and peace right from the Torah scroll that live in our hearts. We say, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless and keep each and every single one of you in this new year, 5784.
Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May we take some of the light and the love that hopefully we feel from each other, and may we hold it inside for those dark moments, and may we refract it back out into our world. Yis Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
And as we begin yet another year together, may we all be blessed in our homes, in our communities, in our world, and in our hearts with the gift of peace.
Amen.
Let us say amen. And the Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. Good Yontif.